Welcome back to the least aesthetic but most wholesome part of BookTube, and today I just want to run through February's reading wrap up. I've read 7 books in total in Feb, including these 4 fantasy books, 2 thrillers and a police procedural as well. I enjoy watching these videos, so I'm going to do them, and hopefully some of you might enjoy watching them, who knows. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, it massively helps out. If you're returning, absolutely love you to pieces. It truly means a lot that I'm not putting all this effort in for it to just get lost in the abyss. So there's a few missing here. I'll tell you why. Some of them I've given away to charity because I don't plan on reading them again, and one I've lent to my granddad because I think it was really good and I think he'd enjoy it. So yeah, let's get into it. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this video, I just want you to get comfy, because I'm comfy, so you should be. I'm sat in a nice little spinny chair that does spinny stuff, and I've got a drink because I'm trying to keep more hydrated so I can get rid of my man boobs. But I also want you to be comfy, because this page, you're not going to get, like I said, brilliant aesthetics, but you will just get a wholesome vibe and a friendly feel. And I just feel like by getting comfy, sitting down, grabbing a cuppa, maybe even grab a notepad and a pen, because some of these recommendations you might want to jot down and read in future, who knows. But anyway, if you've already got a drink, this video is obviously going to carry on. For the people that have buggered off and grabbed a drink, they'll have pressed pause, now they'll press play, and they'll carry on again. So the first book I finished in February was called Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. I'm looking at my phone because I write all my reviews down on my phone. Because if I get to end of the month and someone says to me, oh, what did you think of that book at start of the month? I ain't got a clue. You'd almost think I'd never even read it, because I just forget. So I write them all down, and I try and write how they made me feel. Because that's how I base books. I don't base books necessarily on how they're written. I don't look for plot holes and things like that. If a book makes me feel good, I tend to rate it quite highly. A good story is a good story. Now, I rated this 2.5 star, as you can probably see there. And I'll explain to you why. So it started off really well. I was really enjoying Sally Strange Diamond. It's not called Sally Strange Diamond. I've tried saying that a few times this morning. It's called Strange Sally Diamond. The main character is absolutely fantastic, unique, complex and compelling. The book has great character development, short chapters and a dual POV structure that keeps things moving. However, there was a scene that I came across. I've wrote it in my review, but there was a scene I came across, and it's almost like one of the scenes that you see is there is a lady that's imprisoned by a psychopath. And there's just something that happens in a scene with this pregnant woman that just it didn't sit right with me. And I'm not saying stuff like that doesn't happen. Of course stuff like that happens, and usually I can kind of brush past that. But it felt uncomfortable, and for me, that scene just made me shut the book. I will say I'm not in the best mental headspace at the minute, so usually when I could kind of get through scenes like that and just carry on and have fun with it, I'm not going to say have fun, because you can't have fun with that kind of book, but usually I'd be able to get past it. I just couldn't this month, and I'll always put my mental health first. When I'm already struggling, I'm not going to try and force myself to read through scenes that make me feel uncomfortable, with potential that there might be something more, even darker, coming later on. So I DNF'd it about, I don't know, halfway. I still rated it 2.5 star because I thought it was unfair for me to just put it down as a DNF on Fable, because people might look at that and go, yeah, I'm not going to read it because Tyrone DNF'd it. Now, 2.5 stars, some people might say it's a weak score. I think 2.5 star for me is just middle of the field. It's 2.5 star is bang in the middle of 5 stars, so that says, yeah, it's all right, read it if you want, don't if you don't. And at the end of it, I do point out to people that if they enjoy unsettling psychological thrillers and don't shy away from disturbing content, this book might be for them. And I think if my mental health were in a better space, this book would probably be for me. I just gave it away. So this one has gone to the charity shop graveyard because I just didn't plan on reading it again. I'm not saying it's a bad book. It's just got some themes in it that just unsettled me a bit, and I just didn't want to read any more of. Next up we've got, so the next book I finished in Feb was The Fellowship of the Rings, and then I had a gap between Fellowship of the Rings and Two Towers, but I'll talk about these 2 books together because it just makes more sense. So Fellowship of the Rings I rated 5 star. If you don't know what this book is, then you've probably never just had an interest in fantasy. It's The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I loved it. It was very good. I didn't expect to love it because I'd tried reading it loads and loads in the past, and I couldn't get past the prologue, which is basically a chapter about hobbits, and it's right boring. But then I got loads of messages from people saying, Tyrone, get through the first 100 pages and I promise you, you'll love it. It gets way better. So I was like, all right, cool, I believe you. You got no reason to lie to me. So I picked it up again, got past the first chapter, and then lo and behold, I loved it. It's just such a nice place to be in this world. I don't know what they call it, Middle-earth, is it? Anyway, Middle-earth's class. I wouldn't want to live there, obviously, because there's all sorts of treachery and minging stuff, but it's nice to be in. I think Tolkien's created a world where, as someone that struggles to picture places in books, I feel like I'm on this adventure with these lads, and it's absolutely wicked. No notes really to give in this book. The only thing I'd say is I truly do believe this series is for everyone. I know a lot of people say, oh, I just don't think I get on with Tolkien. I was that person before. I think if you can get out the Shire and get used to the fact that you're not going to fully understand everything that Tolkien's writing, you will have a good time. I think Tolkien wrote this series for two kinds of people. For people like me that wanted a fun there and back again adventure with an unlikely gang of heroes going on this mad, impossible mission. But he also wrote it for people that want to dive further into this world. He's got books everywhere, hasn't he? He's got like the Silmarillion. I think he's got a book about Tom Bombadil. He's created like a huge universe for people that want to dive further into it and come up with theories and learn more about the history of the lore. And I think if you go into this, just enjoying the story rather than worrying too much about the world that he's created, it is just such a fantastic story of unlikely heroes doing impossible things. The characters are wicked. Sam Gamgee is one of the most loyal teddy bears I've ever read in my entire life. The relationship between two other characters that builds more in Two Towers is absolutely beautiful. We'll talk about that in a minute. Obviously, the English language, or the use of English language, is going to be different in this book to what it is in modern day fantasy, because, you know, it was written maybe 80 years ago. But I think it's also one of them books that if you are interested in fantasy, or you currently read fantasy and you've never read it, I just feel like it's a rite of passage. And for me, that's one of the reasons I wanted to read it. Just to be able to say, I've read Lord of the Rings, even if I didn't like it, I just got lucky, I think, that I bloody loved it. It was fantastic. I don't think I've missed out. Let me have a quick look at my review and see what I actually thought at the time. Fellowship of the Rings, just finished it, getting past prologue, I've told you that. Book one is for everyone. On the surface, it's a fun adventure, but dig a little deeper, there's so much more. Every character is unique and adds so much to the story. Sam Gamgee is absolutely class, 5-star, yeah. Very good book. There and back again story. Obviously, they're not going to go there and back again in book one, because there's 3 books in the series. But yeah, highly recommend trying at least to finish book one and then see where that takes you. Now, coming into book 2, The Two Towers, I rated this 4-star. And it's not really anything to do with the book. It's more of a me problem why I didn't rate it 5-star. And that's because part of the love that I had for book 1 was the gang. Like, all these mandem being together on this mad mission were just class. I feel like they all bounced off each other really well. But then they get separated. And I'm not going to say anyone gets sent to Jesus, because that would be a spoiler. But they do. And that obviously happens in fantasy books a lot of the time. They all get separated with the kind of obvious twist that they're probably going to get pulled back together at the end of the story, and they're going to have a right scrap with some massive hard bloke. And I imagine that's probably where it's going to go. But I just missed them all being together, I did. And there are memorable moments in this book, which is why I still scored it 4 stars, because there's a bit in, it's not really a spoiler as such, but there's a bit where they're in this town, and one of them, I can't remember whether it were Legolas or Gimli, gets given the opportunity to stay, and they're like, look, you can stay if you want, dude. And he's like, nah, I'm staying with my best mate. Like, it's just ride or die. And it was just so nice. And then another bit, which is just like crazy wild, when Gandalf the White rocks up at Helm's Deep and he's like, oh, I'm right hard. That bit were like class. And Saruman, him getting his ass handed to him, oh, it was just, yeah, wicked. Like, I'm really sorry if I've spoiled out there for you, but come on, if you've not read books, you've got to have seen films. I watched these films 25 years ago when they first came out, so I actually can't remember what happened, other than the fact that I do remember in one of the films there's a scene where they're on this wall and Legolas is firing arrows out of it. I'm guessing they're going to get back again. I'm sure I remember it being an happy ending. I'm sure I do. But yeah, very good. Honestly, class. Still rated it 4 stars. Still think it's good. It didn't make me need to pick up Return of King, though, frustratingly. And I think it's just because, yeah, gang weren't all together, and I needed them to be. And I know for some people, they're like, well, I don't know, maybe read book 3 so the gang can come back together. I'm crazy. You know, there's a reason that I was medicated for as long as I was, and it's because I'm a little bit... Yeah, still, highly recommend them. What was the next book that I finished in February? It was Leave No Trace by Jo Callaghan, which is book 2 in the, I don't even know what they call it, Cat and Lock series, I'm going to call it. It's a police procedural which includes AI. So this follows a lady called Cat something or other. I ain't got the book in front of me because that's the book that I've given to our lass's granddad to read. Because it's fantastic, really good. But it follows a lady called Kat, who is a widow. She's working on cold cases in book 1 with this AI trial, we'll say. It's like a hologram, and the hologram is trying to solve these cases using facts and figures, and Kat is obviously trying to solve cases based on human instinct. The relationship between the two of them is really good in book 1. It then continues in Leave No Trace, which is book 2. Really, really enjoyed this. The writing is quite simple, really easy to get on with. The relationship built between the two characters is quite funny at times. Obviously, the AI doesn't really understand humour, but it's funny. I'm not going to give any spoilers away. You kind of got to read it to understand. I'm just looking through my review here to see if there's anything I've missed out on. Yeah, so I wrote here, it touches on a lot of interesting topics about how the justice system could potentially be aided by AI, but not just the justice system. I see, you know, we see it at the minute, don't we? AI is taking over most industries in the world. You know, if we're not integrating it completely into how it's run, we're at least using it to support. So it touches on that, which I think is really interesting. I did guess the plot twist, though, but I am basically like the Earth's greatest detective when it comes to these books. So I'm never surprised when I guess the plot twist. Or by plot twist, I mean I guessed who the person was that was sending people to Jesus. Is it really guessing it, though, if you guess every single character you come across? I don't know. Something I really enjoyed with this book, though, was the use of interviews. I really enjoy when I read, like, crime books, when they do, you know, like a real interview transcript in a book where it's like the detective says, the person says, and it's set up like a real interview. I don't think enough crime books do police interviews and get into the nitty-gritty and the psychology behind how police use questioning to try and solve crimes. But yeah, overall, just a really, really good police procedural book. And if you're into them kind of mystery, police procedural, whodunit kind of books, I think you'll really enjoy this one. And I think you should add it to your TBR if you've not already. But read book 1 first, which is called In the Blink of an Eye. Next up, I read a book called The Terminal List by Jack Carr, which was recommended by one of my followers on Instagram, I think it was actually. And I loved it. Nothing like anything I've ever read before. It is, I think he's like an ex-Navy SEAL, and something happens right at the start of the book, and let's just say he gets betrayed by the people that are higher up, and it is just the maddest, most crazy story of revenge I've ever read. And boy, does he get some revenge. He does. He gets all of it, like all revenge. And some of the ways that these people get sent to Jesus is not pretty, but I love it because you want all these people to die. You're like, go on, kill them, get them all. Very good. It's just one of them that you're going to want to read. It's fast-paced, it's high action, it's really, really good. I'm not going to say that I madly fell in love with the character, but when I read these kind of books, I'm not that bothered about loving characters because they're very plot-heavy, twist-heavy, action-heavy, and this definitely was. So if you're into thrillers that have got more of like a government conspiracy, ex-Navy SEAL, similar to what I imagine Jack Reacher's like. I've seen Jack Reacher on telly, but I've not read the book yet. I have got the first book, The Killing Floor, on that shelf somewhere, but I've got too many books to read. I just haven't got around to it yet. So yeah, really, really good. Rated it 4-star. Read it. It was class. Lastly, we've got my 2 standout books of February. Absolutely class, these books. So in January, I did a reread of Red Rising, which is book 1 in the Red Rising trilogy. It isn't actually a trilogy, but I'll come to explain that in a minute. So I reread Red Rising, because, as I said, my memory's terrible. I always forget stuff, and I needed to read it again to remind myself what happened before I dived into Golden Sun. So I read Golden Sun, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago, and absolutely loved it. This book is fantastic. It just builds so much more on Red Rising. So the first book felt very much like dark academia. It's in like a military academy with trials and things like that, and it was fun. The writing, I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I think it's first person. I've not actually looked here. Let me have a quick look. The hands that could not save my life, my wife. Yeah, so it is first person, which I think is one of the reasons this worked for me. I actually really enjoy when stories are told in first person format, but the character needs to be good. So for that to work for me, the character needs to be, I don't mean good in a sense that they need to be morally good. You just need to understand the character. And I think Pierce Brown does a really good job in this of letting you understand Darrow's intentions, why he does the things he does, why sometimes he makes what you might think are stupid mistakes. But you understand why, because you're in his head all the time. For anyone that doesn't fully understand when someone says first person is narrated from inside the mind of the main character. So it will say, I saw a person do this. Third person would be Darrow saw a person do that, if that makes sense. That's in the most basic, logical way. So yeah, it really worked for me. It took it up another level. This book is a lot darker than book one. There's not really any trials or anything like that. It's more a story of kind of trying to understand exactly what's going on in this world. He knows that there's like treachery going on, and it's trying to uncover exactly what's happening in this society. But it's also the most scheming, backstabbingest book I've ever read in my entire life. I've never read an entire book and not trusted a single character. Even Darrow is the main character in this book. All the way through it, I was like, I don't trust any of you. You're all rotten to the core. Every one of you. There's so many bad decisions made. There's so much misery, and just it's horrible. It's one of them books, I will say, if you're going to dive into the Red Rising trilogy, being the first 3 books in this series, don't go into it expecting a fun time. It's not going to be fun. It is a real representation of the horrors of war and the lengths that people will go to just to keep themselves safe, and how selfish as humans we can be to look after number one. But this book just builds on book one. The world expands, you get more characters, more different perspectives. It can be quite overwhelming when you jump from book one to book two, because there's just so many more characters. And I'm trying to think of the world for it, like houses. Like on each planet, there's different people that kind of run the houses. And you're introduced to a lot more of them. So you just have to take your time with it. And I found, as someone that's normally struggles with stuff like that, that just by taking my time, it just helped me so much. Just slow down and enjoy the ride. But yeah, this one's just full of impossible choices. It's wicked. Really, really enjoyed it. I didn't think anything would top it this month until this bugger. Bloody hell. This book's insane. So this is Upside Down, Morning Star, by the same author. Obviously, it's book 3 in the trilogy, and it's everything I didn't know I needed. It's a chunker. It's 500 and odd pages, but it's 500 and odd pages of absolute perfection. So this follows Darrow on a mad mission to try and build an army. So the story of Red Rising is Darrow trying to overthrow a government, basically. And this story follows him trying to get people of different opinions, different cultural upbringings, people that are different, just to come together for a common cause. And it's fantastic. It really, truly is. The character development is insane. This book made me realise that my favourite character in this entire series is actually Ragnar, which I think is quite unpopular opinion. When I've looked on subreddits before, everyone says that Severo and Darrow and loads of other characters are their favourites. I don't see many people saying that Ragnar is their favourite character. But I am a sucker for a loyal dog. Like, Ragnar is just that guy. He just bleeds loyalty. He's just an absolutely beautiful human being. And in this series, at least, it is difficult to find beautiful human beings who you can trust. And I think because I didn't trust anyone, the second I found someone that I could trust, I was like, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Anyway, no spoilers. What else did I think about this book? Yeah, I mean, it's just got everything. The politics, the twist at the end, like the reveal at the end of this book, if you've read it, I would just like, that is just so fantastic. The battles are battling. The death count in this series is in the millions. It is astronomical. I don't know if that's like a sci-fi term there, astronomical. Anyway, if it were, it weren't intended. But this is my first ever space opera. I am told that that's quite normal for sci-fi books when the sheer destruction and the amount of people that die is just out of this world. Another one, out of this world. Sci-fi reference. Go on, Tyrone. It's phenomenal, and it's made me desperately want to read more sci-fi. As I said, this is the first sci-fi book I've ever read other than Project Hail Mary, which is kind of like fluffy sci-fi. And it's made me want to get into... There's one called Empire of Something, the Sun Eater series, is that one? I think Dune, I'm a bit away from Dune yet. That's probably too far for me yet. But there's another sci-fi series as well. So if you've got any good sci-fi recommendations that maybe aren't too overwhelming, tell me. But my sci-fi recommendation for anyone that's never read it before and wants to get into it is definitely going to be these 3 books. Now, the reason I say these 3 books is because Pierce Brown has written, I think there's 6 books out so far and book 7's due out, but the first 3 books are concluded. There's definitely a conclusion at the end of it, and you can just put it down and be like, cool, I'm happy with that. But then there's another 4 books that are coming out, because book 4 is coming out, that are set 10 years in future. I imagine it's going to be with some different characters, with different challenges and things like that. So I will be picking up the next book at some point, just not next month, because I've got too many plans. I think book 4 is called Iron Age. I've got it on my shelf, but I just can't see it because it's behind Robin Hobb's books. So yeah, highly, highly recommend that. That's what I read last month. That was actually, I think personally, quite a good reading month. 7 books. I want to put out there, it is a phenomenally high amount of books. I know you see some of these people that come out and go, I read 20 books in the month of February. Most of them just stick audio books on 2.5, 3 times speed. And I do believe that audiobooks count as reading. Of course they do. I think they're a fantastic feature for people that just don't have time to sit and read, but they're also a fantastic feature for people that maybe got dyslexia, learning difficulties, and people that just can't sit and read a book. But I do think it's just getting a bit much now, and people are sticking them on at 3 times speed just to be able to say, I've read another book. I think people sometimes just need to slow down, just enjoy the moment and just enjoy the words that are actually on the paper rather than trying to make it into a competition. But that is a conversation for another video. The reason I get through 7 books a month is because it's all I bloody do. I don't have any other hobbies. You know, you don't gain 5 stone in weight by being active. You gain 5 stone in weight by sitting on your bottom and reading a lot of books. So yeah, when I'm not doing videos and replying to comments, I'm reading books. And then obviously when kids are at home, I'm a dad. I don't just sit and read books and go, shut up kids. I'm a book reader first. But my kids go to bed at like 7 at night, so then I'll read for 3 or 4 hours at night time because I don't watch television. I've got so many plans for next month. I've got a lot of books on the radar that I want to read. I'll probably do that in another video because you're probably checking out at this point now, getting a bit bored of Tyrone. I'm currently reading Will of the Many. That book is really good so far. Really, really enjoying it. I'm not completely sold on the main character yet, and again, that's from a first-person point of view, but I'm learning over time that I need to just be patient. You can't expect to go into a book and be like, oh, I'm hooked straight away, this is fantastic, best book ever. Plus, it's a trilogy, so I'm just learning to be a little bit more patient. However, something has just happened in Will of the Many where everything clicked, and I was just like, this book's fantastic. And for anyone that's read Will of the Many, it was, without giving spoilers away, where the man was sat down in the middle of a place doing unimaginable things to a population of people. Yeah, you get it? That bit. Just read that bit and I was like, whoa, that took a turn quick. Anyway, this has been class. That's what I read in February. Drop in comments and tell me what you read in February. I'd love to know. If you've got any recommendations that you think I should take through to March. I've not planned my March reads yet, but I will be doing it probably today or tomorrow. If you want to join me on Fable, click in my links. I've got a book club there. I think the book that we're reading next month is going to be The Women by Christine Hanna, because next month is International Women's Month. So I put 4 books out there that were written by women that are about empowerment for women. So yeah, we've chosen The Women by Christine Hanna, which is a story about women, and I don't know anything more than that. Someone just told me to put it on there, and I did. So yeah, great, looking forward to that. Subscribe and stuff if you want. I've got really dry mouth now because I've not had a drink through this entire video. This has been really fun. I never know how to wrap these videos up. Other than telling you, if you've watched till this point, I love you the most.